All right. Hello, hello, hello. This is Reagan.
Denise.
Shelby.
And today we're here to just do a little podcast about the effects of alcoholism on relationships within families and personal relationships. Specifically, our research was based around St. Mary, but Shelby's going to read us a little quote by Ashley Lopez that we found.
I'm always in awe of her, but mostly during her sober moments, as these don't last very long. Rain or shine, it's the first thing she turns to. I tremble in fear and despite the great times. And something about the sound of a beer cap falling to the ground tells me she'll hate me in an hour. A lot of things in life have prepared me for many internal battles, but nothing has prepared me for the war of dating an alcoholic. As a mother, you think I know what to do, and have to do it. Maybe I do. Maybe I see there's no other way out than to leave. Maybe I know that if she tried, she could find her way out. But she can't see her way out. She drinks to not think, so she forgets to think herself. Intoxicated, slurred speech that is only spoken to her. Her word becomes venom, and suddenly the world against her. Or at least that's what the bottle before her makes her think. Tomorrow she'll wake up to realize she hurt the ones she loves. One day she'll wake up and find no one beside her. I truly hope that before that day comes, she realizes that you have not lived until you are able to enjoy the lovely moment of being sober. As for herself, although I have learned to love her like I've never loved another, I must walk away for the biggest love I've ever known, my daughter.
That was a beautiful quote that Shelby had found that related to our project a lot. And I just wanted to get you guys interested in thinking about our topic of how abuse of alcohol can affect one's personal relationships. We also did quite a bit of research on this, and I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to Denise to read about some of this information that we found about alcoholism affecting relationships in certain ways.
Thank you, Reagan. In a study done in 1996 called Alcohol in the Early Years of Marriage. In the study, Alcohol in the Early Years of Marriage, Leonard and Roberts recognized marriage as a milestone in adulthood, which considers how alcohol consumption affects the new marriage by looking at alcohol use for men and women prior to marriage and in the first year of marriage. This research found that husbands who drank heavily were related to decreased marital quality and was a major risk factor to marital violence. On the contrary, it was found that the drinking habits of wives were not related to marital disruption. Surprisingly, increased alcohol consumption for wives showed increased intimacy and affection towards their husbands, which may be seen as a positive effect. In addition to that study, another study done in 2017 called Risk Factors in Alcoholism, the Role of Family Environment. This study looks at the influences of family pertaining to risk factors of alcoholism, study done in India. It focuses on the family's conflicts, control, and expressiveness correlated with alcoholism, personal independence, achievement, and morals. All the participants were alcoholics. And in conclusion, variables from the family environment were strongly correlated with the individual's alcoholism. These variables include family cohesion, expressiveness, conflict, achievement orientation, organization, and control.
Honestly, that's a lot of really great information that we were able to find. Thank you for putting that out there, Denise. Would you mind kind of giving a background of definition of alcohol abuse or substance abuse and what it does to a person?
As we all know, when someone is intoxicated, heavily intoxicated under the influence of alcohol, they do not act accordingly to what they normally would in their behavior. In a study done in 2023, the study investigates the neurophysiological processes when the brain is heavily intoxicated with alcohol. Specifically, it focuses on the way the brain controls its reactions when intoxicated. The two types of control that were tested were proactive and reactive. Overall, it is known that cognitive thinking/control is reduced under the use of alcohol, and a lot of people facing alcohol use disorder can experience these effects whether they think proactively or reactively under the intoxication.
Thank you so much for that, Denise. Like I had mentioned earlier, we wanted to, take this information that we had learned and base it around the St. Mary population. So we set up a survey to gather some information about how students on the USM campus view drinking, if they've ever had family members with drinking, as well as we kind of mixed methoded it and did some interviews to get personal stories from people's lives about their relationships with people who have suffered from alcoholism. These surveys were sent out to fellow classmates in all of our me, Shelby, and Denise's classes, as well as it was sent out to our teammates, as we're all on a sports team here. And with that being said, you can tell here that most of the answers came from a majority of women here at this school, so the data might be skewed a little bit because most people answering were female rather than male. And then we also wanted to get an age range of basically who we were testing and everything. And most who responded to our survey were between the ages 20 and 21, as you can see here in this pie chart, and then 18 to 19. So most people replying were around our age, me, Denise, and Shelby. Then we also just wanted to get an ethnicity background on everyone, and with this being more of a PWI school, majority answering were white, over 50% were white. And then also basically goes along with age. We wanted to know what class was mainly answering this. This one was pretty evenly spread out between freshman, sophomore, and junior. And then we get into the more detailed questions. So we ask, did you consider yourself a drinker? And 44, so majority of this was no, not at all. 17% moderately consider themselves drinkers. And then the other 34% is only on the weekends, which is expected in college students. So then we ask, do you know someone close to you, family or friend, that has an issue with drinking? And this was over 50% of people do know someone that has had an issue with drinking, and even over that, know people that used to. So majority of people know someone now or used to know someone in the past that had an issue with drinking. Then we asked, has drinking ever made it hard for you to be with your family? And this majority, no. With being students, that was expected, not having an effect on the family, which kind of contradicted with our hypothesis, which we can talk about later. Next question. Have you ever become aggressive because of drinking? Most people answered not at all. And to relate this back to some of our previous reading that we did before, Denise had mentioned that women more so are not seen as aggressive with drinking as men are. And as we saw at the beginning of our survey, most of our responses came from the female population of the school, so that those two bits of information would relate to each other. So with this survey information, our hypothesis that drinking negatively affects one's personal relationships here at the university was kind of rejected. But the more we get into it here with these interviews, you're about to see it kind of can go either way, back or forth.
Okay, so I do know somebody that has struggled with alcohol abuse. The way it started is when one of our close members of the family, like it was his own son that passed away, and the way he dealt his problem was just doing alcohol and using drugs as escape from his reality of emotions and everything.
Yeah, I had an uncle who You know, he was never around. He was always drunk, and we never really had a good, you know, good relationship with him. But you know, it never really affected my side of the family. But we just knew that that was something that we just didn't want to do.
There was a period in my life that I did struggle with alcohol. It was my freshman year of college, and I was really going through depression and anxiety, and it was affecting me mentally. And usually, when I was going through depression and anxiety, basketball would be my coping mechanism. And that got taken away from me. So I just started drinking for fun, and then it ended up I started feeling better when I was drinking, and then I just started drinking like every day, even in the mornings. And I realized like I would wake up and I started feeling shaky because I wasn't drinking, and that's when I knew that wasn't a good thing. It also like runs in my family. Every male figure in my family is an alcoholic.
Like I said before, we weren't really around him, but when we were around him, I mean, you couldn't really tell that he was drunk. I mean, you could smell it on him, but he was one of those alcoholics that could kind of control who he was just because he's just so seasoned to the drinking life.
So with alcohol, it made him very aggressive with by being physical with other people. Like, there's so much. Okay, for me, for instance, one day he was very drunk on the early afternoon, and it was me and my younger sisters, and he had my mother's car. He was too drunk to drive, and I'm only 14, didn't know how to drive. So my first time learning how to drive was learning from somebody who was under the influence, which was very hard because he did not have a driver's license.
Now, some when they drink, they're really happy. They're a good drunk, and it doesn't affect them. Like my grandpa, he's been an alcoholic since he was 17, and he never gets angry. He's just nice, always nice. But my father, when he would get drunk, he'd get really angry. And I do recall one time he tried to fight me in the kitchen, and then after that, my mom made him get help where he wasn't allowed to be in the house.
I don't really have a problem with drinking. I mean, like my parents always told me, everything's good in moderation. But, you know, me, myself, I'm not really much of a drinker just because I don't like how it makes my stomach feel. So, you know, I'm not really much of a drinker.
So with his connections with his family, he basically cut them off just because they were trying to help him and everything, but he didn't want the help, so he just cut them off. And when it came to our family, like his immediate family, he slowly cut us off, but he barely had a job before, so he could never hold a job. So our income was just going steady with our mother. So with him just living in a house rent free, doing nothing, barely even clean, just drinking all the time was not healthy in a living environment to the point it caused us to distance ourselves from him. So to this day, he's nowhere to be connected with his family, nor his kids, or even the mother of the children of his children. So he abused that power.
No, this problem never really affected the family. I mean, I have no idea how it affected, you know, his first wife. But, you know, it didn't really, we just knew, like I said before, just don't do what he does. That's kind of how it was.
I like reached out for myself and got help. I just started going to therapy and everything like that. And that was basically it.
So there was moments in his life when he was drinking, he's like, okay, I need to go help. Where he'll send himself to like a rehab for 3 days where he has no connection. He does a 3-day detox. And he'll come back, yeah. Like that detox will last him for a week and then switch. He goes back to his old habits. And with his family his family try to help him, we try to help him. He didn't want the help, so it took, like, he'll go in and out of his mind saying, oh, I need to get the help, and he did, but he really never fell through with that plan, which caused him to go into jail, spend some time. But even with jail, with him spending at least 7 months in jail, he never stopped drinking, so he continued to drink to this day.
Throughout those interviews, you could tell that everyone's experience is very different. All those interviews were from St. Mary's students, and they all had a very different experience with alcoholism. Overall, in this project, I do think our hypothesis about St. Mary's students was mostly rejected, as far as alcohol having a negative impact. But through these interviews, we can tell that with different people, it is a different situation. So I think that this is a hard question to have a concrete answer about. Thank you for listening to us, and I'm glad that we can inform you a little bit about alcoholism and share some stories.